Hello and welcome to the Two Medics podcast. I am Drusha Gunawardena. I'm a cardiology registrar, subspecializing in coronary intervention. And this week, guys, well, what can I say? I've got a very, very special guest for you. Please introduce yourself.
Well, I'm the special guest now. It's been that long. I mean, it does feel a bit nostalgic, doesn't it? Coming back. I mean, I had the familiar story of me falling asleep prior to us having to start the podcast. Oh, I should introduce myself. My name is Imran Lask. I'm a consultant radiologist, and welcome to the Two Medics podcast. Yeah, it's nice to be back, man. It's nice to be back. It's been a while. It does feel. It's going to take a bit of time to ease back into the whole groove of things. Even signing in, like Rabi or my wife was saying, what are you doing? So the podcast. She goes, oh yeah, I forgot
Oh,
about that.
that.
Yeah, oh that
Oh,
thing.
wow.
Oh that thing. Yeah, yeah. How you been, man? You've done a sterling job. You've done a sterling job. I've been enjoying listening to our guests, and they've been brilliant, haven't they? They've
Yeah,
all
they
been
have.
fantastic, and
They've been brilliant. I've been stressing. I'm so glad to have you back. Jeez, you can go
no,
back to
mate. I don't know
introduce.
why you were. I mean, I've enjoyed it, and you know what? I've got
Ah,
to say, I told you like the phrase that you said. I mean, was it? I'm enduring Ramadan. I'm not
observing
celebrating
it.
it.
Observing it.
Observing, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that was as accurate as it gets. I mean, wow, that was tough, man. I'm so
Hmm.
glad to be. I mean, I'm going to just remove all the religiousness out of it. I just forget all that stuff. Yeah. I mean, there's obviously all that stuff. But I'm talking about the actual starvation is
Yeah.
horrendous.
Yeah.
The actual starvation is horrendous. I did not enjoy the starvation at all on any level.
Yeah.
But that's the point. That is the point, I guess. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And you're making up
yeah.
for it now, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I went for some. Yeah, yeah. I've lost a huge amount of weight. I mean, you probably won't be able to tell on the camera, but yeah, I've lost a huge amount of weight. But it's all good. It's all good. Easy come, easy go is what I always say, and
Yeah.
very much eating my way back into a few more kilos.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we had some wonderful guests, didn't we? We had Zach, we had Nav, we had the other radiologist. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's awesome, and Nav was great fun, wasn't he? We had a takeover from Nina and Bethan again, and we had Jamie and Chris doing the lads episode. I mean, when I was listening to those, I really felt like I missed it. I was like, I should be there, man. I should be there. And do you remember that day you were like, Imran, do you want to come back for
Hmm.
like the last minute? And I was really considering, and then I think I fell asleep again.
Yeah. Fair enough. I mean,
Yeah.
it was yeah, it's good to have you back, man. I mean, like over this whole week, I've been so excited. You can see that I've like flooded our sheet with topics. It's like 3 pages
Yeah.
long now.
There's loads of topics this week, but then it's just med Twitter, isn't it? There's just so much to talk about as well. There is so much to
Hmm.
talk about, and yeah, there's so much to sort of really think about, undress, and hopefully learn from. Right.
Hmm.
So where do you want to start, Trisha? Yeah.
Well,
Where should we
I
go?
thought there's one that kind of seemed apt to have you back for, which is a thread from at Doc Russ Jackson, and his
Mm.
kind of Twitter handle or his kind of name is Get a Grip, which I don't, that's not relevant, but it just if you're looking for him, he's really good. He tweets a lot about the government and stuff. But anyway, he talked about. There's a tweet from the 11 a.m. on January the 28th. That was ages ago, but I think he must have retweeted that. That's why it came to my attention. And he
Mm.
wrote the words, and the way to deal with opposition in the media is to flood the zone with shit. Now, I feel like that is a kind of Diet Coke version of your line. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's dilute the pollution, isn't it? And
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
we've had a few people quote that over the last few months, hasn't it? Like actually put that into action and stuff.
So
Yeah.
that's basically what the Tories are doing. I mean, like you're basically like a Dominic Cummings 2.0. Like you could be the
But
person.
mate, I mean, this doesn't make any sense because, like, I mean, what are they doing? Have they got good policies and they're trying to dilute it with a whole load of pollution? Is that what they're saying, or are you
Yeah,
just going to just
literally.
dilute everything as much as possible with absolute rubbish, and then you don't know where to go and you just end up voting Tory again?
Exactly.
Is
Exactly.
that the?
It's so confused. Like, oh, but I remember the color blue, so I'll just vote for them.
I mean, could you imagine if that worked as a trainee? Like, if, okay, no, the way I'm going
Yeah.
to get through my training is do the worst, work-based
Level.
assessments possible, and then they will know what to do with me. They're just going to have to let
Yeah.
me through. I mean, is that possible? Can someone try this out for me and tell me if this is the case? And I've wasted a lot of time trying to get half decent ones. Yeah, I mean, that's just Tory for you.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm being cynical these days, but I don't see how they're going to lose anything anytime soon. I mean, it's just everything they get up to and everything that you keep reading about them, everything that seems to be so detrimental to so many people just seems to be ignored, doesn't it? It just
Hmm.
They're still there.
This,
They're
I
still
think
there.
it. I think with you being off for Ramadan, I think also a lot of the links that I put in there have been food related because I swear to God, like all the messages that I've been sending you have been food related, and I'm like, it's not on purpose. I'm always like sending you a message and be like, oh, sorry, it's about what time is it?
Yeah, it
Oh,
was so
sorry.
funny. It was so
But
funny.
I saw this one which was really good, and I'm not sure. Have you
Mm.
had it before? Have you had a Jamaican patty before?
You know what? Like I haven't, and I've
Oh,
seen them in Tesco's,
right.
and I've seen halal ones in Tesco's, and I keep thinking, oh, one of these days I'm going to buy one, but I never
What from
have. I've never got
Tesco?
around to it.
Oh,
Yeah,
no,
yeah. I mean, I don't know where I could get halal ones otherwise, but I just saw them there, and I thought, oh, okay, yeah, I might buy that one day, but I haven't got around to it.
next
Well, have you
time.
had one?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like my dad used to have a corner shop, and next door there was like a place that would do them. I think it was like an ethnic place,
Mm.
and you get them hot, which is why I'm like, oh, I'm not sure if you should get it from the supermarket because it's hot and like the outside of the patty is still kind of like crispy, and you're eating it with a white paper bag that's kind of like drenched in the oil. You know that whole thing. It's just that's like a special experience in itself.
Really? Okay,
Um,
we're gonna have to do this.
yeah.
I
Next time I
can't say
come
I've
to
had
London.
one.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I can't say I've had one. Um,
Okay, we'll do.
yeah, yeah. Then we should do that, isn't it? But I mean, look, Theresa, if you're walking around and you saw a sign saying "BJ's in your PJs," come socialize and eat ice cream in your pajamas. Would that pique an interest at all? Would that be something you go into and have a see in what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, isn't there? So there's BJ's in your PJs. So this is BJ's. It refers to Ben and Jerry's, doesn't it?
Yeah,
But I
you
think
dirty people. This is
that's
not smut Twitter.
yeah.
It's a
And
clean show.
then
Come on.
I like how they do. So it says come socialize and eat ice cream in your pajamas. But the thing is that the ice and then the cream in your pajamas is a separate line. Cream in your pajamas. So
Uh,
so that BJ in your PJs is the one to kind of the gut punch, and then the cream in your pajamas is the little kind of like at the end, a little flourish. It's lovely.
I mean, you can't. Whoever wrote that sign. So we're
They
referring
knew.
to a poster that was tweeted, and someone said phrasing question mark, and there is this poster saying "BJ's in your PJs" with referring to Ben and Jerry's ice cream and nothing else. Come socialize and eat ice cream. In your pajamas. Oh yeah, and it says cream in your pajamas. So it's been strategically put. So the next
Yeah,
sentence, cream in pajamas.
that
Um,
person.
it's not by
That
accident. It can't be. It
yeah,
can't be.
exactly. That person knew exactly what they're doing. So where?
Yeah.
So wait, where is this on offer though? Seriously though, where is this?
Well, just in case you're
Just in
thinking, well,
case.
we should check this out. We should check this
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
For research and stuff.
I mean, I feel like this is the kind of thing that you'd send me during a mid fast when I'm starving, and then you'd be like, "Hey, man, BJ's in PJs," and be like, For the number of reasons, it's not really something I can partake in right now. Yeah, no, I enjoyed making you feel bad every time. Every time you did message me,
Yeah,
and
it's
you're
all
like,
good.
"Oh, mate, I'm so." What was the other day? You said something. Oh, mate, I just had the dirtiest burger. I did this and I did this,
Oh
and I'm
yeah.
like, Thrusha, I'm just really hungry right now.
Oh yeah, and then I messaged you when you were messaging. You said you tweeted about coffee machines, didn't you? And I was like, "What can you drink
Yeah.
coffee?" And you were like, "Yeah, like after certain times I still can." And I was like, "Mate, I'm joking." It was like, can you drink water? And you were like, "Sorry."
Yeah, I took it too seriously, didn't I? Yeah, that coffee machine, man. A lot of people are well into their coffee. And I was like, man, these lot. There was some really good suggestions out there. It was yeah, interesting reading, and some people got a little bit yeah. There seemed to be camps. A few
Yeah,
people were
sure.
DeLonghi's, a few people were I don't even know how to say the word
Sage, isn't it?
Gadja,
Oh
and then there
no,
was
I've never heard
Sage.
it.
Yeah, there was a few, and
Did you get
yeah, it was
one?
quite nice. Yeah, I've got a sage. I've got a
Oh,
sage touch, which is nice.
cool.
I'm not really into coffees. I don't really know. I mean, if it's good, it's good. But for me, it's good enough, man. It's a lovely
Hmm.
machine and does a good enough coffee for me. So, and I'm not. I don't know if I'm going to get into that whole grounding and like the timing. And there's so many things you can go into. It's like, no,
Right.
mate, just press the button and get it made. I'm
Yeah,
happy.
fair
It's all
enough.
good. Coffee just seems to be what we run on, isn't it? I mean, that just
Hmm.
seems to be how a lot of the NHS runs. And I think even someone said to me, "Are you like a secret anaesthetist or something?" I think earlier today. So I thought it was quite funny. But talking about what makes us run, day to day, the whole NHS. It's just a bit. It's sometimes you kind of read tweets and it does get you, doesn't it? So there's
Hmm.
one that was on Exec today. I just heard a story of a consultant who needed a desk diary for £7.50. So £7.50. Okay, they needed a diary. It's going to help them run through the day, etc., etc. And they went through 7 managers and ended up at exec level. And the request sent back saying, "Please use IT system. If not, resubmit." And we wonder why the NHS is broken. I mean, where do you go with that, mate? I mean, you want a £7.50 diary to try and help yourself be organised, and you can't even get anything like that because, well, it's a bit like that hot food thing, isn't it?
Hmm.
Like like why people don't want to partake in that kind of thing? Have you ever been in that situation where you're trying to get something done, try and get something sorted, and it just goes through all these hoops and stuff, and it comes out like computer says no?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's usually over silly things like a persistently broken printer somewhere, or like having to like our on-call phone for a while was kind of like broken, and just trying to get a new one. You almost have to like
Mm.
submit something like a business case. It's ridiculous. I think there's some
Oh
interesting
wow.
replies to that thread because they do kind of go from the "this is ridiculous" or working in the NHS, and then there are other kind of interesting comments like £7.50 is quite a lot, and then they talk about how things are marked up for the NHS. And Selva
Mm.
replied saying, "For now, in GP, it's just a matter of asking one manager, and it will be fun times when you're taken over by hospital trusts and large corporates as per policy paper to get rid of
Mm.
partners." So I guess then it will become more bureaucratic, which is essentially what this guy's complaining about, isn't it? Layers of
Mm.
bureaucracy, and they're not able to get the end result. But interestingly, then there was the other replies where you're like, where people said something along the lines of, "Why didn't you just get it yourself on Amazon?" And I'm like, oh, but then that's kind of the problem, isn't it? Everything with the NHS is kind of seems to be relying on that goodwill, doesn't it? And then
Mm.
once
It's
you start
true.
giving that, then when does it stop? I think.
It reminds me actually. Well, I actually had the opposite experience once, where I went to I was training someone new, and there was no TV in the reg room, and I thought, well, I
Hmm.
need a TV because if I'm going to be staying in overnight, I normally watch TV, and so I managed to get all the regs to put some money in, and we're about to buy the TV, but then someone said, "Do you mind just mentioning to the manager you're going to get this TV?" So I went around, found the manager, sat in his office, and I said to him, "Listen, I need something for the reg room, and I wondered if you can help me here, or if you can be okay with it." And he kind of looked up at the ceiling and said, "Oh, here we go. What do you want?" And I said, "Look, I want to buy a TV, and it's going to cost this much secondhand." And he goes, "Oh, is that it?" And he took out an envelope and just gave me the money and said, "Go on then." And I'm like, "Okay, why have you got envelopes full of money just sitting around?"
Wow, what
Yeah, it
power!
was it was the most bizarre thing. Yeah, and he just didn't seem bothered at all. Like, go away. But then I did ask them, so I thought, okay, that's pretty easy. And then I noticed that there was no wrist, where you're trying to type on the keyboard, and there's kind of wrist support. So that'd be quite good to have for everyone. So I went and asked them again, and he told me to get lost, like in a polite way. And I was like, man, why are you so cool? Just give me money for the TV, but then you don't want to give money for the wrist support. I mean, surely that's a useful thing. Anyway, yeah, it is. It can get a bit, I don't
Priorities,
know. Yeah, exactly,
priorities.
exactly. Yeah, it is.
I
It is
realized
strange, isn't it?
I realized that I use the slippery slope argument, which is I
Mm,
hate it when people do that, so I shouldn't use that. But my point
mm.
is that it shouldn't be up to NHS staff to kind of supplement these things. There should be, simply put, there should be things in place for you to do your job efficiently, and it shouldn't rely on the goodwill of workers, isn't it, to run a company?
But I mean,
Because
that's the way with so many things, right? Like when people pool their money together to get a sofa for the mess room
mm,
or something, or you know what I mean? Like so much of it, it would be nice if the hospital would provide certain facilities to
yeah.
make work easier and nicer, but it just doesn't happen,
Mm. But
unfortunately.
that's
And you
like
got to get
Yeah,
together. Yeah.
but the sofa's like nicer rather than easier. Whereas you could argue like, how does the kind of organizer make your work nicer? It makes it easier though, right? I
Yeah, I
guess.
mean, arguably, it'll make you more efficient, isn't it? That's what one would hope that person's doing, rather than just doodling or something, isn't it? Or drawing,
Yeah.
drawing pictures of tractors or something of that effect.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Fair enough.
did you see all that stuff? That was absolutely
So
amazing,
bizarre.
wasn't it?
I
Yeah,
heard.
yeah.
Did you see there was a response from like one of his friends who was like, "Oh yes, but that's because he's looking up a particular type of tractor, the Dominator." You're right. It's like
There's a
fair
tractor
enough.
called the Dominator.
Yeah,
Wow, wow. That
those
is
tractor names.
Yeah, mate. I mean, I can imagine how that became a slippery slope. He searched that and then
Yeah,
decided to search for the next Dominator.
yeah.
Yeah, his interview was just so brilliant. I was like, I'll wait for the official response. And it was like, why did you bother coming out and talking to anyone if that's all you're going to say, mate? Like, give us something to be entertained. I mean, this is why people vote for you, people, because you're entertaining, aren't you? Who else is going to give us these gems of moments like that, right?
Hmm.
It's just absolutely incredible. There was another tweet. I mean, talking about language, which you wanted to talk about, didn't you? It was quite language from Trisha Elliott, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Language is fascinating, and so is medicine. Yeah, do you want to
Yes.
tell us about this one, Trusha?
Yeah, sure. So this is a tweet from Trisha Elliott. Her handle is at Trisha underscore the underscore doc. And so the title of her tweet is Language is Fascinating and So is Medicine. And she's tweeting an article in the BMJ. And it's an interesting read. So the article's written by Katrina Cox, who's an academic clinical fellow, one, and Zoe
Hmm.
Fritz, who's a Welcome Fellow in Society and Ethics. Well done to you too. And the title of the article is Presenting Complaint, Use of Language that Disempowers Patients. And it is something, I guess, that people do talk about in general parlance. So I guess when I originally
Mm.
clicked on the article, I didn't really think that there was necessarily going to be much in there that I hadn't seen before. Like, I always kind of felt it's a little bit funny when people write missed STEMI. That's one that always kind of rankles a little bit. Or when people
Mm.
write refuses treatment, I always find that's a little bit kind of pejorative. Like, doesn't need to
Mm.
be that strong, and it kind of casts the patient in a particular way. But
Mm.
there are some other really interesting examples as part of the article. You do have to be a BMA member to kind of to read the article. But if you
Mm.
are, I definitely recommend checking it out because it talks about some interesting other, I guess, other things that we kind of take for granted. For example, presenting complaint. I guess now
Mm.
when you say it out loud, complaint. Why do we use that term? I mean, are we being oversensitive, or well, I don't think we are, but I just think it's kind of interesting to think about.
These things are always interesting when they get brought up. Like,
Mm.
now you mentioned present a complaint is something that you think, oh, okay, yeah. Because until someone brings it up, you don't even think twice about it because it's so ingrained in the way that we do things.
Yeah,
And, like you said just then about when you write something like patient refused or something like that. Like I've noticed that when a patient does refuse, I don't even say that. I said, unfortunately, this could not be done for whatever reason, and then leave it
mm.
at that. Because we have had occasions where some patient has complained and said,
Mm.
well, I didn't refuse. It just wasn't explained to me properly by such
Mm.
and such person. I just found myself having to go through this, and I want someone to explain it to me, or I didn't want to have it on that day doesn't mean I don't want it later. So saying I refuse
Mm.
is not fair. So now I'm a bit more careful because, especially nowadays, that they can access the reports and the notes and things like that if they want to. Some patients will pick up on things that you don't even think twice about, you know. Um, uh,
Yeah, definitely.
and I think that is an important thing to take into consideration, especially nowadays when we're writing notes and the ability for them to be able to access these things. You've got to think about what could it sound like
Yeah,
from their point of view.
yeah, and even just that. I mean, they kind of say that we know that the language you use also kind of will affect the way that the next person might kind of approach them. So already you're
Mm,
kind of setting the mindset for the next person. So if you write poorly controlled diabetic, that's
mm,
stigmatized. I mean, that's the example they use. It's stigmatized, and you're already there's a judgment with that. And is it
mm,
really necessary to have that?
yeah.
Um, and so I think it's about being careful. Although I think people argue that is that kind of being pedantic, but I think really we're just trying to. Is it really pedantic to consider other people's feelings? And then that's
I mean,
where
this
that
kind of
comes up.
leads us on quite nicely onto the other tweet by Susan David, PhD, where actually, well, I mean, this particular tweet and the way it relates is because they tweeted accurately labeling emotions as psychological superpower. It transforms a murky experience like stress into a finite one with boundaries, and name like disappointment or depleted enables you to effectively move forward towards your needs and values. And this is, I know when people say, oh, you're going into the details too much, it doesn't mean all that much and all that kind of thing. But when someone brings that up, it does by giving it some sort of label or kind of showing you a slightly different definition to a word that we may use all the time. It does make you think, like, right?
Mm.
And like I was saying to you earlier, I was talking to a sort of a mutual friend about pride, and I was saying, look, I have a good friend, and they were saying to me that imagine all the things that you could achieve with that pride. If you can get rid of pride, then you'll be able to get a lot further. And I really believe that to be true, and I really try and take that on board. And then we ended up talking about pride in your work. And I think at some point during the conversation, I realized that we were talking about different definitions of pride. There's pride in terms of how it can facilitate your ego and make it bigger, and there's pride in your work in that you're trying to do a good job and be proud of the work that you do, and they're completely two different things. And so we were talking, weren't we, like, thanks to our little Twitter journey that we've had, we felt as though finding definitions for certain arguments and reactions to hyperbole, I suppose, has enabled us to be able to identify reasons as to why we get upset about certain things, right? I mean, you had a good example, didn't you?
Yeah, I think the thing is that for me, and I think it's the power of language, right? Because it helps you articulate what your kind, the dissonance or that kind of feeling that you have inside. because and I used to often get it when people would kind of, when you'd kind of go through I'd always have to go through the dance of my name, like having to explain my name to people and then being like, oh, it's long and where's it from? And I used to always find
Mm.
that would cause like a little bit of, and it's difficult to explain, a dissonance, like an unhappy sensation. And then when people
Mm.
started talking about microaggressions and how often that kind of people taking that conversation in that direction in itself, even though it's not kind of tacitly, that's not like obviously kind of antagonistic in its own
Mm.
implicational way, was still antagonizing, and you
Mm.
could describe that as a microaggression, and giving a name to that kind of interaction, I found it very kind of empowering, because it made me kind of
Mm.
understand what it was that was making me unsettled. And it was just an
Mm.
unsettled situation, which may have been maybe 10 seconds of discomfort, but one that I'd
Mm.
experienced many, many times. And so to hear
Mm.
that term, I think was very kind of like, not the word is like a balm like effect, because it
Mm.
kind of made me think, oh, I understand, actually that was why I felt upset, and now I've got a word to
Mm.
describe it, and you kind of almost then can kind of put it in a little box, like that's what it was.
Mm. Yeah, there's kind of days where you kind of, I'm not entirely sure why that upset me or what's going on. Like, why am I feeling bad about this? And now,
Mm,
yeah, you get better at sort of identifying what it is. The other thing I would say actually been quite a positive experience from all of this is actually, like after a while you start to get used to certain arguments and the way that certain people will bring forward an argument or reply to an argument. Like, as I was telling you, where there was a tweet, which I think, what did I write? I think I even put like, oh wow, I think Susanna, what was that one? Oh, that's it. Sorry, Azara Sultana.
Sultana, oh yeah.
Yeah, she tweeted a story about a non-verbal black teenager who has never left the UK, got detained and put at an immigration center, and there were so basically you got a black teenager who can't talk, and for whatever reason they were detained, and they were actually going to get well, sent
Sent.
away, and I
Mate,
mean, I mean, yeah,
fucked up, isn't
where
it?
do you want to
I
go
mean,
with that? Yeah,
that story is just so, like, I was reading it and literally my eyebrows were just all over the
stuck.
place. Yeah, literally, I was like, "What is going on?" He
Yeah.
was so he was originally in a hospital in Kent, and then somehow he got sectioned under the Mental Health Act by the British Transport Police, because they were like, for
Mm.
fare evasion. Like, the guy was in hospital. Like, what? He's not evading any fare. That guy was like, in some distress. And then
Mm.
he had some documents on him. So this guy, non-verbal, can't communicate much. Somehow they said that he's from Nigeria. He's not Nigerian. He's from the UK. But somehow they, like, which in itself sounds like this is some racism is going on here,
Maybe,
and
just maybe.
just maybe. And then they're like threatening to like deport him, and like in these papers, I'm like, this poor boy, like the amount of distress that he must have been going through, like it's just completely unimaginable. And I was just reading it like, this must be a parody. This is such a joke. This is such a
Mm.
joke. Like, how can you regard someone who can barely speak with such utter disdain? Like, you must not view them as human. Like, how can you behave in that manner, other than being, dehumanizing that person? And that can only be rooted in racism. And so I think you mentioned that there was a reply being like, how do you know this is racist? Right?
Yeah, yeah. So someone replied saying something like, "This is terrible, but I'm not sure racism's got anything to do with it."
Right, mate.
And I was like, "Mate, I don't know." But thankfully, having seen I mean, that was a predictable response. That was
Mm,
always going to happen. Or someone's going to try and explain it for something else. You just know it. You can almost predict the argument. So when I saw that, I think before it would have wound me up big time. But now, having seen that kind of argument again and again and again, you kind of now understand, like, this is a very common reply, and very much based on their own inexperience of prejudice, right? And then, I had a look at clearly, obviously, I click on the person, click on the profile, and they just fit the demographic of someone who's probably not going to have issues if they ever were found non-verbal, because they're not going to get deported anywhere because of their complexion, you see. And so when you're not going to be remotely in that situation at any point, or never even experience that at any level, then you're never going to see racism as a thing. It's not a part of your life. You've never been there, right? uh, and I guess that's for me anyway. I think Twitter's done that for me, where these kind of things keep coming up, and you get used to it. You kind of you get better at dealing with it. It doesn't hit me as hard as it used to. It's like, oh yeah, here we go. I know
Is
that
that
one. I know this
is
argument. Yeah.
yeah? I mean, the thing is that there is kind of like your own mental health to think of, but then the thing is
Mm,
that there is it's out there. It's happening now. So like I
mm,
think you're allowed to feel angry at it. The thing is that what can you do about these people? Like when you get the people who literally are like, oh, I can't see it. I think I did see. Well, speaking of like the comforts you can get of Twitter, I do remember
mm,
someone saying along the lines of, "You don't need to get all these people on side. You don't need to.
mm,
Like
mm,
you need to recognize it's wrong. You need to call out what's wrong. But those idiots who are like, oh, I don't see it. Like you don't need them on this
mm,
journey. Like
mm,
they're the dinosaurs and you can be the asteroid. Like you don't necessarily need to have to get them around to it. And I think I saw some comfort in that because those
mm,
people, like sometimes I reply to these people saying like they've told on themselves with that kind of response. You know exactly what you're getting
mm.
with that person, and you know that they should just be disregarded. They're just
Yeah, yeah,
there's no
exactly. But then it's like you've seen this, you've been there before.
yeah yeah
You know exactly the kind of interest straight away. Like you can almost tell what kind of life they've had if they're going to say something like that. I think, okay,
mm,
fine, we've been there
yeah
before. I've been here before. It's okay. We don't need to
yeah
talk anymore. You know, like I think I think I did a tweet. Do you remember that tweet I did a few weeks ago? I don't, and it was about like homework because and all it
oh
was like I
yeah
felt a bit sad. I felt a bit sad for my kids that were studying after, and it was a sunny day. And I thought, well, what is the point in this? Like, it's just such a
yeah
waste of time. So I tweeted, and I think there was all these people who came out of these arguments like why you should have homework, why is it a good thing, and um, and I think someone decided to get a bit of a bicker between each other, and they finally wrote something like, you know what, I can't explain this to you, and left it at that. And I thought it was a really good reply. They said, I think they said, can you explain this to me? And then they said, no, I can't, not to you. And it was like, cool, man. Like you've just
mm,
ended that conversation because clearly you're never going to win the argument. There's no point. They feel the way they feel, and that's it. Um, but it kind of, we're talking about sort of. I mean, maybe I've become more of a bystander. With, I mean, clearly, I don't really get too involved these days. Through to like, yeah, man, I do rate you've been doing subtweets like crazy, like subtweet memes. I've noticed that. I'm like, what is he talking about today? And I have to message her, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? But that kind of brings us to another tweet, isn't it? By Natalie Martinek, PhD. So we've got a few PhDs today.
mm.
Why bystanders bystand in a toxic workplace? Well, workplace bystanders and bullies, an unpopular opinion. And so there is this article here that you want to talk about, isn't it? Why bystanders shouldn't throw themselves under the bus. Is there a merit to this, do you think? Yeah.
I mean, the thing is that I think the reason why that tweet kind of generates conversation is because there are people who are saying, for example, if you're a person of color and you observe racism in an area towards another colleague and then perhaps don't say anything, people understandably, even though the situation is whereby you've received racism from a particular person, there is that kind of feeling of an upset and disappointment with someone who you think of as a kindred spirit. And I think
Mm,
they raise some interesting points in this um, in this article, which I definitely recommend reading. So it is
mhm,
by that person who tweeted. So Natalie, it's with a H, Martinek,
mm,
PhD. And she said 5 takeaway messages about workplace bullies and bystanders to ponder. So one, it's unhelpful to pressure people into doing the right thing according to your
mm,
rules of conduct when you're unaware of their personal circumstances in their own workplace context that can cause harm. Context matters always. Number two, place responsibility on the system and its leaders for perpetuating conditions that cause moral injury. And three, there are strategic ways of dealing with bullies to avoid becoming recruited as their ally, who will participate in a
mm,
smear campaign against their target and avoid becoming their next target. And so, I mean, there are more. There's it's a useful article, but I think it does give you that kind of other side to how difficult it can be in those situations, and then just some people just trying to make their own way, and it's not
mm,
pure malice and cowardice,
mm.
which I guess the
Yeah.
implication is.
I mean, these situations are always more complicated
Mm.
than meets the eye because it's not always just a case of like, I've seen something wrong, I've got to do something about it right now because that's the right thing to do. You know, I think there's I was reading a book. I can't remember. Maybe it was Psychology of Money again or something. But it was talking about. Do you remember that story about the Emperor's New Clothes? Do you remember that
Yeah,
one?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so for me, I just thought Emperor's New Clothes is a funny story from when I was a kid. But when they talked about it in the book, they kind of gave a different context to the entire situation with the Emperor's New Clothes, and that this person was an emperor, thought they're super, super important, and then they got scammed to give these clothes that weren't really clothes, and they're walking around the town showing off their new clothes, and no one said anything. No one said anything, and
Mm.
they were, think, oh, that looks wonderful, you look amazing, until they met like a little child, and the little
Yeah,
child has got no preconceptions of who this person is, how important they are, that they're the king of the kings or whatever. And they said, "You're not wearing any clothes though." And then that's when it hit the person, "Oh my God, I'm not wearing any clothes." And then they got embarrassed.
yeah.
And so the reason I bring it up is because the context of the people that went with the person that was not wearing any clothes and said how amazing the clothes are is because that they know how powerful that person is. They've got an entire
Mm.
society around them, etc., etc. Until you meet the person that's not unaffected by any of those things. And that's what I always think about, like when you do have bullies, or someone that's a bully. And I mentioned this, and obviously there's only so much I can say, but allegedly this may have happened where someone may have been a bully for a very long time, and all it took was one thing to crumble, one little thing, and the whole thing fell apart. And it turned out to be some locum who'd never worked with this person before, didn't know who they were, got a bit surprised that someone was being rude to them as that, and then said, "Well, I'm not taking that." And
Mm.
then just took them to town. And then when that happened, everyone came out of their knives, figuratively speaking. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just saying, it's amazing. It's amazing what the social context can push people to accept
Yeah,
in situations like this, right?
yeah, fair enough.
Um, yeah.
So we've gone quite kind of dark and serious. I thought perhaps we
Oh,
could
sorry.
bring
Yeah.
up. No, 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 no. It was good. It was interesting though. There was a tweet from Mehul where he said,
Mm.
"What's the most ridiculous thing you've managed to convince someone of at work? I once spent 10 minutes trying to arrange a creatinine infusion for my SHO, who told me that that was a treatment for low creatinine." Do you have any like that?
Well, so when I convince someone of something that doesn't
Oh,
exist.
or maybe someone convinced you of something. Either way.
You know what? Like, I think when I was younger, I had a bit of a slightly maybe I was a little bit shorter than I should have been, and I had this one F1, and I was only an F2, but this person was driving me insane because I'd worked with this person before, and I just found that they consistently, on paper, they were going to be phenomenal. But in
Right.
reality, they just weren't. And then we're on call together, and there's one that when like you're going into on call, and this person's going to be on call, you think, oh
Oh
great,
no.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was getting bleeped left, right, and center by this person for every little thing under the sun, and to the point that I think this person may have allegedly given naloxone to someone. And I was like, "Why did you give naloxone?" And he goes, "Oh, they were just feeling it had a funny turn after having some pain relief." And I said, "Yeah, but like you just don't give that for no reason." And she goes, "Yeah, but that's the antidote." And I said,
Good.
"It's not like a vial of potion. Like you don't do, there has to be some signs and symptoms as to why you'd give someone naloxone, right?" And so in the middle of the night, I think it must have been 2 o'clock in the morning, they called me up and they were like, "Hey man, this person's protein's really low. I think we should do something about it." I was like, "Listen, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. What do you want me to do about their protein? Like, what is
Yeah.
it that you want?" He goes, "I think we should do something about it. This is low." And I was like, a few hours from now, is the patient going to be alive or not? And we can mention to the day team or something, but we don't need to do anything. And she goes, "Yeah, but isn't there something we could do?" I was like, "What? Like mince a steak and put it into the IV and just jam it in there to put it?" And they were like, "Okay, well, you don't have to be like that." And I was like, "I'm just like, I'm running around. Why you keep bleeping about stuff like this, man? Like, chill out. Like, just deal with the things that need to be dealt with, and this kind of stuff. Just write in the notes. And you've got to be confident the team are going to know what they're doing in a few hours' time with this. And it's probably been going on for quite a while. So
Mm.
that's the only time when I feel like I might have said something a bit silly, and I regret
What?
it. I do
Oh,
regret it.
okay.
Yeah, go
But you
on.
didn't convince her. She didn't go and do that though, did she? She didn't go and
I
mince
don't.
steak.
I mean, this is the point that I wouldn't be surprised if they tried.
Oh, fair enough. I thought you were gonna
This
be
is this
like,
is yeah.
go like give give the patient some Frezibins or whatever, and just hope the protein's gonna
Or
come
just
up.
make up some sort of, "Oh yeah, you just need to get a protein shake from my cupboard," and
Yeah.
just give it to them in multiple doses over the next few hours, and the albumin will go flying up. Yeah, I could have, but that's the thing. They would have believed anything like that. They would have, because they were just so sort of superficial in their understanding of what to do, which is incredibly surprising given their qualifications. Anyway,
Oh, interesting.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
trying to
yeah. It
think.
was, yeah.
I'm trying to think if
I
anyone's
mean, yeah.
ever fooled me, but I can't. I'm just obviously I'm too wily. Uh, I literally
You're
I did
too
have a
smart.
story.
You're too
Yeah,
smart.
yeah, yeah. I'm too smart. No, I've
Mm.
forgotten. But oh, I did have one where like I was in SHO on a wardround with my F1 my F1 the F1. And it was just jokes. Like he was a mate, and so it made wardround so much more fun that you're just going around with a mate. But
Mm.
he had he would write in the notes, and I'd be saying stuff and whatever, and he'd take ages to write, and to a point where sometimes I'd be like, oh mate, let me just write for myself. And but anyway, he's like, no, like what else am I going to do? And I'm like, anyway, so once he was just taking an age to like write stuff in the notes, and I had one of those, the Evian water bottles that have like a red cap, and I just decided
Mm.
I thought it'd be quite funny if like so I let it I put it on a radiator, and then towards the end of the war round I got it, and it was like it wasn't really really warm, but I think it was probably just lukewarm, and I thought it'd be funny if I kind of squirted into his pocket so they might think he's pissed himself. And so,
Oh.
yeah, literally. And so he's writing, and I squirted some into his pocket. And then he looked down, and I got a laugh. And then he was like, "My iPhone's in my pocket." And he thought that was his
Oh
iPhone.
no.
And literally, it's going like white, black, white, black, white, black, like on nothing. I was like, when you go from that euphoria of like, oh, I thought he pissed himself, to I'm pissing myself now because I've like ruined your iPhone. Oh man,
Oh wow!
that's
You know
a
what? You've taken that little thing from school. We used to do that in chemistry class with the little distilled
yes,
water
that was
bottles. Do you
it.
remember?
Yeah, yeah, literally, yeah. We used to have those distilled water
Yeah,
bottles with a little thing. Yeah, it was a boy school
yeah.
thing.
So yeah, that's right. We had distilled water bottles. They had this little snout, and then what you could do, you could creep up behind someone and put it into the pocket and squeeze it.
Yes, exactly the same. Basically, what you're saying
Yeah.
is, even though it was like 20 years like after boy school, I was still doing that same shit, still
Yeah,
saying the
you're
same
still doing
jokes,
it.
saying the same crap.
You might as well just draw a knob on his notes and hand it in or something. That's as
Wait,
far as you went there.
I still do that from time to time on a jobs list. I like to draw a knob on a jobs list from time to time. But like, you know what? I was thinking about you the other day, and I was just thinking about one memory. And I mean, I
Oh
don't know why
no,
I'm mentioning it on the podcast, but it wasn't. Were you there when like Vinny? he had he had like
yes,
a
I was there. I was there. Yeah,
test tube of sulfuric acid, and he's holding his
yeah, I
goggles, and
was
he put
there.
the
I
goggles
was there
on,
when it happened.
and
Yeah.
then he
Yeah,
poured
so
sulfuric acid.
yeah,
Oh.
exactly. So that's exactly what happened. So basically, he had his goggles which are around his neck, and he had a test tube full of sulfuric acid. And then I think someone said, "Mate, you should get your goggles on. You've got sulfuric acid in your hands." And he's, "Oh yeah, good point." So then he got both hands, not realizing he's still holding onto the test tube, and then put his goggles on, and then put his hand back down, and the test tube was empty. And I thought, that's weird. And then what actually happened, because when he put his hand up, it actually poured over his back and started burning his back. And then he started screaming. And then he fell on the floor. And then the doctor, I mean, then the teacher ran up and they had to rip off his shirt. And again, we all got distilled water bottles, started spraying his back, trying to dilute it, dilute the pollution.
Oh no.
It was absolutely incredible. But you know what was funny is because me, him, and the other guy used to play pranks with each other all the time. And it's kind of well known that we'd always be playing pranks on each other. So I got sent out of the room straight away that day.
Oh, so I thought it was
No
you.
question. Yeah, get out right now. And I was like, what for? I'm just saying, get out. So I had to stand outside. And then the teacher came in and had a bit of a go at me, like, that's really dangerous. I know you guys have a little bit of a prank and stuff, but putting sulfuric acid on someone's back. And I'm looking at the guy like, what do I say? Like, I'm going to get in trouble here, but I mean, I'm not going to say anything. I don't want you to get in trouble. And then eventually he was like, I did it to myself. And everyone looked at me with, what? And then it kind of came out what happened, and I had nothing to do with this. And that flew around the school like wildfire, didn't it? Like everyone
Yeah.
knew this guy burned his
What?
back.
Because I mean, I remember like Dr. Lexton like took him out into the. I mean, they took him out of the classroom, right? So there are people walking by, and they
Yeah.
could just see us all just like pouring distilled water to him. Like he was
Yeah.
washed. I don't know. It's so weird.
Cleansed of the chemistry. Oh, how terrible!
God. Anyway.
Yeah,
Random memory.
that was really funny. Oh, good old public school, Yeah. Didn't that come up last week? I think someone tweeted at you about something that you said on the podcast about apparently
Yeah.
was it feeling bad? No, being
Yeah.
apologetic about the background that we've come. Yeah.
Yeah, I talked about a tweet from Julia where she'd said that she's talking about private schools and how it's not hypocritical to talk about the disadvantages or the unfairness of private schools having been to one. And someone said,
Mm.
fair enough, which is true. I think it's fair enough. And they were just agreeing with us. So that's good. That's good. We can stand down. We can stand down. They're agreeing
Yeah, we
with
can
us.
stand
We're
down
okay.
there. Yeah, don't need to be.
Cool.
Angry emoji. Angry emoji.
So there was like one tweet which was kind of, well, really interesting and kind of
Hmm.
is inspirational. So it's from Deborah Lee. Her
Hmm.
Twitter handle's like Deborah Bunch of Numbers, which does make me kind of a bit afraid, but it's not got a dog picture. So then you're like, oh, okay, maybe it'll be
Hmm.
fine. And it was fine. So Deborah Lee, she
Hmm.
tweeted at 9:32 a.m. on the 28th of April, and she said, on Friday, I had a bit of a turn where I became lopsided and unable to speak. Having heard me lamenting ambulance delays, my husband bundled me into his car and drove me to A&E. I was taken into resus, and 35 minutes later, I was in a CT scanner. Oh, thanks, Imran. 30 minutes later, a bolus of TPA was on board, and I was winging my way to Oxford for a thrombectomy. From start to finish, the NHS
Hmm.
served me with pace, expertise, and kindness. Today, I'm sat in a cafe being travelled by bus, reflecting on events. Naturally, I am eternally grateful to my husband for his swift actions, to all the NHS staff that I came across, to those who invented clot-busting drugs. I can't get one thing out of my head. What if my husband hadn't put me in there and my daughter had called for an ambulance and I'd been put in the category 2 stack? Through no fault of my own, the Southwest has the worst ambulances handover delays of any region. My system is working unrelentingly to solve this, but to no great avail. And we know this. People are waiting ages for ambulances, and it could have been a very, very different story. So it's kind of amazing in one, like when things kind of
Hmm.
like come together. But unfortunately, there's
Hmm.
just so much inequity that you just can't guarantee that same process for many, many other people.
But this highlights something that I've always thought about as the inside knowledge, of everything. So, like for example, I know that if there's someone that I know that's gonna looks like they're gonna have they're having a stroke, then I would try and take them to Queen Square because I know, or I would turn up somewhere where I know there's a stroke service. I wouldn't just turn up to like the local DGH or something. I'd
Mm,
go to somewhere that I know they've got an interventional neuroradiologist that works there or something like that. Where
yeah.
I know that, or let's say pediatrics. I
Mm,
would go to the place that I know has got a proper pediatric service, not just a DGH level pediatric service. But that knowledge comes from being within the system and knowing how the system works. Because you turn up somewhere like Basildon, it's not a specialist centre, so
mm,
we have to transfer people out to other places. So I'd cut that out and just go straight to the place that they would be transferring to in the first place, if that makes
mm,
any sense.
yeah.
And so there is a bit of inside knowledge here, like the knowledge that ambulance takes such a long time to get there. There's potential delays that can affect what sounds like quite a serious turn of events, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, and it's
I,
exactly what you say, that sort of inequality in terms of what's available to people and the knowledge that's unavailable to people when it comes to knowing where they should go for certain things, right?
yeah.
I don't know what the answer is to that. Yeah.
It's true. I mean, it's probably more money and stuff, isn't it? I guess more paramedics, expansion to stroke services, mechanical thrombectomy. I mean, that's something that
Yeah,
seems to
get the
have been a
cardiologist to do it, isn't it? Yeah,
yeah.
get the
Well,
cardiologist to do it. Yeah,
mate,
yeah.
the will is there. The will is there. I was at that conference recently, and there seemed to be like a
Oh
great
yeah.
appetite for it. It's just we just don't
Hmm.
have the infrastructure yet.
Hmm.
So I reckon it'll be a matter of time. We're ready to
It's got to
step
be a
into the
matter of
breach.
time. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's going to be controversial for me to say being a radiologist, but what I often find in a lot of things is that people complain that there's nothing being done. There's not, like, for example, let's say for us, there's lots of X-rays to get done. There's loads of X-rays to report. There's just not enough radiologists to report X-rays. So
Hmm.
then someone will say, well, why don't we get the radiographers to help? I mean, there's a whole load of radiographers that want to help get reporting. Let's do that. And they're like, no. Is that all right? Well, there's a solution to the
Yeah,
problem, and we don't want to take that solution, but you want to keep complaining about the problem, but then you don't want to do the work yourself. So we're kind of stuck now, aren't we? Where do we
yeah,
go? What do you want to do? People are suffering now. um, and that's what I think about this kind of thing with interventional neuroradiology. Like, I'm not saying anyone can do what they do, but there must be some level that someone who's a non-interventional neuroradiologist can do to get some of the way or most of the way, to help
yeah.
someone. And surely that's worth it, because you just don't have the numbers. There's just not enough interventional neuroradiologists. Like, why would anyone do it? Personally, why would anyone want to do interventional neuroradiology when you go into radiology? Hopefully, try and have a slightly easier existence, not sticking coils up and all the rest of it. Yeah. Anyway, it goes against my complete ethos of path of least resistance and do as little as possible. Just no,
It's
no, no,
it's
no,
really
no.
interesting though, isn't it?
Yeah.
How there's well, I mean, there's a spectrum of radiologists, right? Like, and that's one of the beauties of radiology that you can kind of like really. I mean, you've demonstrated that really well that you can kind of craft a kind, or you can tailor the career a career to what you kind of want it to be. And even within cardiology, there is that kind of subspecialty wise, right? So if you wanted more of a 9 to 5, then you'd probably choose to do more imaging or like
Mm.
because there will be fewer on calls in that way. But we obviously we know interventional
Mm.
interventional radiologist is really, really passionate about it, isn't he? And so,
Mm.
and my brother, he's interested in radiology. And when I talk to him about it, although I suspect he may change as time goes on,
Mm.
but he talks about the interventional side of things. So, I mean, isn't
Everyone
one of
does.
the
Yeah.
yeah, is that what
Yeah.
happens when you get trainees? They all say they want to do intervention. Is that the
Yeah, a
same
lot of
thing?
them do. Loads do. It's like going to med school and become wanting to be a surgeon.
Yeah.
Everyone does. And
Right.
then you kind of go along and think, actually, you know what?
Yeah.
But I think I like, even if you chose a really busy thing to do, let's say
Mm.
like for you, interventional cardiology is busy, right?
Mm.
Then it really depends on what life do you really want. So either you can go work in a very busy center
Yeah.
or just go work at a non-busy center. It's your life, and
Mm.
it depends on what you want to do and how you want to do it. There's nothing stopping you. The only thing I would suggest is that the person who's doing the interventional procedures in the biggest hospital in the busiest place is probably going to get paid the same amount as the person who's doing in the most dead end place in the country, and is
Mm.
probably leaving at 5 and having a wonderful life, because medicine's not the situation where certain places will pay you more. So in that situation, you really do what you do if you enjoy it. It's got nothing to do with monetary value in that situation. If you want to be busy, go be busy.
Yeah.
There's nothing stopping you. If you don't want to be busy, go find someone that's not busy. It's easy as that, I think, anyway. Maybe I've simplified it, but that's the way it's been for me,
Yeah. Fair enough.
personally. And that you make very conscious choices to not go for certain places if I heard that's going to be a busy place to work. Like, nah, mate, I
Yeah,
don't do
but
busy.
then
I just
I
don't
mean
do
that leads us on to like another tweet though, which is from
it.
Hassan, and his
Mm,
handles at MHA_92_, and you linked this. My sister has
mm,
made more money from henna this weekend than I would have locuming.
mm.
I mean,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I always get confused as to people's arguments when it comes to money. Like, I really don't understand, because you're gonna, as soon as someone tweets about money, it'll be PA pay or nurses pay versus doctors pay. You get a whole load of people who say, "I'm not here for the money. I've got no, that you're not. It's a vocation." And I almost feel like, if I could somehow get all of you guys and put you in your own little hospital so you guys could work together for free, that'd be
yeah, it'd
great.
be
Yeah, I'd
amazing.
love it. Then you guys can do what you got to do, and the rest of us can try and figure out the mess that we're dealing with here, which
Mm,
is where we feel as though we're not getting remunerated. Now, when someone's getting paid more money for doing, let's say they are allegedly making more money from doing henna over you being a doctor, I mean, that's just, unfortunately, that's the way society runs. Like, you could be the most skilled curling champion, from that Olympic thing, incredibly skilled thing, but you're not going to get paid as one of the most skilled snooker players. Like, there's just certain things will pay you more, and it's not entirely related to skill and being a pro or not being a pro. You know what I mean? Like, they're just, if someone's going to pay for henna, they're going to pay for henna. And if someone doesn't want to pay for a doctor, they don't pay for a doctor. That's the running rate, unfortunately. And I feel like we put ourselves in that position when you've got people that will say, make you feel bad for wanting to have inflation equivalent pay rise.
mm,
I mean, that's not much to ask for. I don't think so. And I think we should get more than that. And I think that we should get paid a lot more than what we get paid right now. But there'll be people who'll argue with me about that. It's all right, fair enough then. You go do your own job somewhere else where you guys are happy with each other and don't do things for money. But someone's got bills to pay. Yeah, and there was a tweet, something like that, wasn't there?
yeah,
Somewhere.
yeah.
Yeah, go
Literally,
on. Where was
just on
that
that thread.
on?
I was
Yeah.
just, I was just taking a little double take, but someone who'd blocked me before has unblocked me. I'm like, whoa, what's happened?
Well, you
Anyway,
become friends again.
have I got
Yeah.
friends again? Yeah, who knew? So anyway, this is a tweet from so I think it's Ying Yi. I'm sorry if I've mispronounced your name, so I'll spell it just in case. So it's
Hmm.
JING and then YI, and the handle's at JINGGYYI. And it says, "Damning if true,
Hmm.
please don't expect many of us to take it sitting down." And it was about, and they're kind of quote tweeting a Reddit thread, which is from a throwaway account. Oh my gosh, this is a convoluted link. Sorry. Basically, there were a certain president of a particular Royal College gave a talk, and they pejoratively asked if there are any, in inverted commas, BMA activist type people present, and then said something along the
Hmm.
lines of everything going. It's not the right time, in inverted commas, to ask for pay restoration, and that they don't expect any major pay rise for doctors. And they said something like, doctors of this specialty tend to be very altruistic/humanistic. And so I'm pleased to see in that thread, Rohin and I have come in with the cardiologist saying that can't be us because we'd never call ourselves humanistic or altruistic. That's definitely can't be talking about us. So we've ruled ourselves out. Which Royal College do you think it is that's the most humanistic and altruistic?
I don't know, man.
Some people have
I
said
can't think of. Go on.
peds. People say peds, and some people say palliative, and some people say oncology. Jerry's, I
Mm.
guess. I think of them as generally
Yeah,
quite
yeah,
nice.
yeah. Fair
I
enough.
reckon if I
Fair
was going
enough.
to put my
Yeah.
money, I'd say it's oncology.
Money. Haha, nice.
I
Yeah. I
don't,
like it. Um,
and that's only because I'm thinking of Carl Sakura. But
But
yeah.
the thing is, like, I mean, look, let's not confuse things here. Like, I mean, nice. I mean, I don't. You can ask for money and be nice, and you can ask for money and be a good doctor. I don't think the two are
Hmm.
related. I just think that you're worth what you're worth. I mean, that's what it is, and you're only worth what someone's willing to pay you.
Yeah.
And these kind of things, when someone comes out with these sort of like arguments about altruism and all the rest of it, it's like, and right now is not the right time. So when is the right time? Well, when is it? Like, when is the right time for us to get a pay rise? And when that pay rise finally
I
comes, is it going to be enough? Gone.
found out who it
What happened?
is. It's the Royal College of Emergency Medicine. Emergency medicine. They call themselves humanistic. All right, fair enough. Emergency medicine.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I wonder what Farboard thinks.
Allegedly.
Oh, allegedly. Oh God, thank God you're
Yeah.
here. Thank God
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
here.
we're gonna get cancelled, mate. Yeah, I don't know, where to begin. Like, so it's the same old thing when, like, for example, there'll be an article in the Sun about like some doctor who charged loads for private work, and they've got a wonderful lavish lifestyle. But in the same newspaper, they'll have, oh, can you believe what David Beckham bought his son on his son's wedding day? But then no one's got a problem with David Beckham getting paid, and no one's got a problem with him being a bit flamboyant with his money. But then when a doctor does those things, makes money and be, I don't know, allegedly flamboyant, people say, oh, that's just terrible. It's a bad thing. It just makes us look bad. It's like, no, it doesn't make us look bad. It's got nothing to do with anything. They could be a really good doctor for all you know. They could be really good at their job. They just work in different environment and they're after different things. I just, yeah, I don't know. I just find that kind of stuff really frustrating. And I don't think when you've got so many people who keep going on about a separate argument that's got nothing to do with it, which is, what about being altruistic and all those things? Like, yeah, I think you can do both. I really do. I mean, just because, let's say I get paid a lot, doesn't mean that I'm a bad radiologist. I might be a radiologist that gets paid a lot and does a good job. What's wrong with that? I don't know. I don't know. What do you think, mate? It's these kind of things. I just feel like we haven't done ourselves any favor when we get into these sort of circular arguments.
I think that this whole you're right there. Like I think that there's certain people who are in a comfortable. It's like the homework thing. Everyone who's kind of replying saying about how amazing homework is, they don't do homework anymore. And I think in the same way that
Mm,
people are saying, "Oh, we don't need pay to go up," they probably it's not a problem for them anymore. That's great. Like
mm,
brilliant. You're comfortable. Big whoop. Just remove yourself from the conversation. It's not relevant
mm.
to you. And if you get offered that pay rise and you don't want to take it, by all means, plenty of give it to charity. Do whatever. But you don't
Mm.
need to kind of like everyone else doesn't have to go down with you just because you want to be some kind of martyr.
Well, I mean, have you noticed that I haven't really seen much in the way of um, much shouting and arguments about consultant pay? It doesn't really
Yeah,
come up all that much. But why is that? Why
yeah,
do consultants not make too much of a fuss about what they're getting paid?
yeah.
It's because they're probably up to something else. I mean, that's the truth. That's what I think. I think they're up to something else. Most of them. I mean, I think that either there's one or two things they're getting from the NHS. Either there's going to be enough to kind of get most things sorted as a kind of base income, or they're
Yeah,
getting time back. So they've got a very, very flexible job that will get them what they want to get and be able to do whatever they want to do. But they're doing other things in other places. They're getting advantages somewhere else. But you don't see them. I don't see many, consultant strikes and consultant, arguments like this. It all happens from prior to that because at that point, until you get been able to carve earnings out somewhere else, the income that you get from the NHS is all you've got. So it matters. It does matter. And most of the time, I think that very senior people, like you said, they're not in that situation anymore, and they're the ones that be like, "Well, you don't need a pay rise. It's not the right time for a pay rise." Like, yeah, why don't you talk about when it affects you? If it doesn't affect you, then stay out of the argument. It's got nothing to do with you. You know what I mean? I think you're completely right saying what you said there. Completely right. Um, yeah. Anyway, slight tangent on one of my favorite subjects, I guess, isn't it? Money.
yeah.
Um,
I know.
yeah,
Speaking of
which
which,
probably
though,
land me in trouble. Yeah.
no. I think you're very reasonable there. But we should mention. So we had some messages about the NHS bursary, the Liverpool NHS
Mm,
bursary, and so we've seen the kind of the situation where a couple of our medical student colleagues are struggling to kind of fund their training.
mm. Oh
So
yeah, yeah. They wanted us to talk about it, didn't they?
yeah,
Yeah.
so there's some accounts to follow. So at MJV_1.
Hmm.
Michaela, she's a final year medical student, and unfortunately she doesn't have
Mm,
enough money to pay her rent. And the NHS bursary. I mean, she comes from a low household income, and just struggling to pay the rent and stuff. And it's difficult, isn't it? Because you've got these promising medical students, and they're in for the long haul, and just I mean, this kind of situation is only going to make us lose talent because we're not
Yeah, I
supporting.
mean, this is the thing, isn't it? It depends on what, as a society, we think is important and what we care about, isn't it? And I think, yeah, unfortunately, yeah, getting people to care about this kind of stuff is difficult because they already think that you being in. I think there's certain connotations of being a medical student that exist. Like, first of all, they think the general public, I feel, think that medical students are super clever, which they may be, but they don't have to be. Um, you got to be really hardworking. You work all days, all hours of the day, and you probably come from quite an affluent background, or you're clever enough to be able to get there, so you must be all right. You know,
Yeah,
and I think that's a real shame that the vast gamut of people that come into medicine is not appreciated, and I don't know how that can be changed. Right,
mm,
just making awareness of this kind of thing, this kind of situation where someone is struggling to get through, will hopefully make a difference. You know, because some people really do need help to get through, isn't it?
yeah. So just to
Yeah,
mention, there's another
yeah.
account to follow. So at the grad medic, and that's Ailey Garrett's.
Mm.
Ailey Garrett. Sorry if I've said your name wrongly. I'm pretty sure it's Ailey.
You're gonna get called
Um,
out, mate. You're gonna get called out. Yeah.
Ailey. Yeah, please correct me. But
Yeah.
Ailey Garrett. So she's the founder of this kind of hashtag Liverpool
Mm.
NHS bursary. So a worthy cause.
Okay,
Cool.
yeah. I think we're kind of coming up to time, but I think there's one tweet I thought would be quite good if you don't mind.
Yeah, of
And then we're
course.
going to go to the big tweet. And actually, I don't know if you noticed, but we've been messaged on our Twitter account a specific question that I thought maybe we could
Ah,
finish with.
okay.
So let's go through this one first. So Heichi, it's Heichi, which is Hayche, tweeted, thinking about my old school classmate who during third year memorialized her first patient who passed away 2 weeks into the rotation by getting a tattoo of his MRN on her inner forearm. Wow. Um, wow. There's so much wrong with that, isn't there? And the reason I mentioned that is because of the other situation through show, the big one of the week. Do you remember? Um, there was a certain American doctor who may have taken their 11-year-old son or daughter to a cadaver lab
Yeah.
and subsequently do procedures on this cadaver, take photos of it, put it onto Twitter, and tell everyone it was the best day of their life, that they were able to share a certain experience with their child. Um, and the reason I think it relates to this tattoo of a dead patient is that when something like this happens, you kind of realize that this has got nothing to do with the patients and patient care. It's all about you and your own ego, in my
Mm.
humble opinion, when something like that happens. Yeah, what do you think? Well, how did you feel about that when those photos popped up? And I mean, they got tanked, didn't they, on a lot of levels?
They did.
And thankfully, they deleted it.
They
But
did.
unfortunately, the event did happen, and there's no taking back of the event. There's not a tweet that you can take back. It happened.
No.
Yeah.
It's weird, isn't it? Because you kind of like wonder that there's several different kind of barriers that should have really stopped it from happening. The whole sequence of events. It's peculiar, isn't it?
Mm,
Like one, you'd think morally, like this must surely this. How did this at no point strike you as a weird thing to do with your 11-year-old kid? But
mm,
then, secondly, being allowed to even get into that area with a child, and then thirdly, being able to take photos of yourself doing it. Because I remember for a dissection, wasn't it like a punishable? I remember someone saying like you could get chucked out of med
dude, you get
school.
kicked out. You
Yeah,
get
yeah,
kicked out.
if you
Yeah, you
got
get
caught with
kicked
your
out.
phone on
Yeah.
you. In fact, I remember there was
Mm,
a person at the beginning who I don't think they searched us, but they pretty much said we had to put our phones into a box.
mm,
Um,
mm,
and that's even it's just but it's sad that it got past checkpoint one, which is just on that human level, like someone's donated their body. And when
mm,
you think about how difficult it was historically for medical students to get access to bodies, I think they used to use kind of like prisoners and people who are executed. And it was
mm,
very, very difficult. And when people now donate their bodies, it's kind of with this kind of goodwill, isn't it? Because they kind of think,
mm.
well, they're furthering science in the medical profession. And although it might seem like a sweet idea, like you're trying to encourage your kid to do medicine, that's why does it have to be with a real body? Like it just seems like such a like weird idea.
But you know, when we were doing this in med school, do you remember like we had this thing called PDS, which is professional development spine,
Mm.
and we had long conversations about what it would be to be dissecting a body, the moral
Oh
implications of
yeah.
it, and all this kind of. There was a lot of stuff that happened pre going in there and doing that, right? Because at the end of the day, like at first I was a bit macho. I thought this is not going to affect me all that much. I don't really, it's all good. But then when you kind of get in there, it does hit you like these are people. These were people with their own lives, and
Mm.
now they're here and they're being sliced up, and for the greater good. And so, yeah, you only have the utmost respect for them. Really, that's what I felt. And there were points during dissection. Maybe there's kind of a precursor, like where I was going to go. Like I was clearly not cut out for this. Cut out for this.
Yeah.
Um, but like I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I didn't like cutting bodies. It didn't interest me at all. I thought it was a bit. It just felt a bit nasty after a while. I didn't enjoy it, and it started messing with my mind a bit. Like you start to, I don't know, like when you start thinking about like
Mm.
who they were and how they ended up being here, and then how's an 11-year-old going to have the capacity to deal with that?
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
I just don't think that's a healthy thing to do personally.
Mm.
And in a world where we're worried about what books they read, whether they should be reading Harry Potter or not, and these kind of things. And what about chopping a body,
Mm.
a human body? I mean, surely there should be something there that'd be like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I could tell you right now though, if I told Lils, like, do you want to come with me? Like, I wouldn't even be able to finish the sentence. Like, do you want to come into a dissection? Do you want to come? She'd be like, no. Like, oh, cool. There's no way. So I don't know how this person got their kid to go with them. But it did make me think. I read this really good book recently called Written in Bone, and it's by
Mm,
Professor Dame Sue Black. She's like a forensic pathologist. So interesting.
mm,
And she just
okay.
talks about how much you can tell from a person's life from their body. She basically, would work in close conjunction with the police, identifying bodies, trying to understand how they died. It's amazing,
Mm,
really. And she talks about
mm,
how at the end she goes, "I'd like my body to be dissected, not by medical students though, and I think because she thinks that, understandably, when we did dissection, I think it was quite early on in our careers, and I don't think I really, as you
mm,
say, like I don't think I really fully appreciated it. And I think in some
mm,
ways our dissection is almost beyond the anatomy. It's beyond understanding anatomy. I think that's what they tell us, like that's what we're supposed to be doing. But in some ways, it is
mm.
kind of like a rite of passage.
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
the only people who are allowed to do this are doctors and murderers. Like those are the only people who are allowed to cut up other people's bodies, really, as in
Mm,
when they're,
mm.
well, I guess when they're alive. But
Well, murderers aren't allowed to, but they do. But
they
anyway, yeah,
do,
carry on.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, gotcha. So like, and I think in some ways it is like a rite of passage to have done that. But it is like
Mm,
it's still an honor, isn't it? I guess if you had to put it in some way, like it's an
mm,
honor that these people have kind of volunteered themselves. And so when I saw it, the word that came to mind was desecration because it just felt like,
mm,
what the hell are you doing in that way? What the hell are you
mm.
doing? I'm glad they deleted it, but
Yeah,
how the
I'm
hell
glad
they
they
get to that?
deleted it. And I don't know. I don't know whether they get any sort of professional repercussions of that. But I can't imagine that would go down well in the UK. Like, I think you probably lose your job very quickly. I can't imagine.
Yeah,
Yeah, that would
yeah,
go down at all. Um, but anyway, I think there were a few other arguments are being flown around about the entire thing, and I mean, there's lots of different ways, but we very much concentrated on what it means to do dissection in the first place. Right, so there was one we got a personal DM
yeah.
to our Twitter account. I don't know if you've seen it yet, Thrusha.
No,
Someone called Late to Med. And basically, they're saying, I'll read it. So, hello, hope you're both well. I'm an avid follower of the podcast. Thank you very much. And thought I'd ask for some advice. I recently received an offer for medicine. It's been something I've always wanted to do, but I'm having doubts if it will be worth the sacrifices. I'm currently working as a cardiac physiologist. That's kind of your area, specializing in devices. Oh, okay. But learning echo as well. I would have to essentially give this up for medicine. I guess I'm asking, what are the good bits of doing medicine, and if you guys would do it again if you had the chance? Thanks in advance. So interesting, they said, what are the good bits, and not didn't ask about the bad bits. So they sound like
yeah.
they probably made a decision. Okay, Thrusha, you go for it.
Well, I've got to say, I mean, having had the podcast with an excellent cardiac scientist, Chris, it is very difficult to say what are the advantages of doing medicine over being a cardiac scientist because they're such impressive people. So I just,
Mm,
more fire to you for doing that. I think you'll be excellently placed certainly as a cardiology registrar. Um, what are the good bits of doing medicine? I think there are lots of good bits. Um, Today was a really, really good day for me. Like I had lab in the morning, and I got to do some PCI for patients who'd come in. So there were two patients who'd had acute coronary syndromes, and they had two of them had lots and lots of symptoms, and they were difficult. And I got to do the procedures myself, and I got a lot of satisfaction. So I think there's a lots of opportunities within medicine to kind of directly impact on people's lives, and that's corny. It is corny, but it felt good. And I
Mm.
had clinic, which was also quite good. I just seemed to have like quite a good run of like interesting patients who I was able to explain stuff to. And I think for me, like I like talking a lot, and I think
You do?
I
No, I'm
do. I
joking.
love it. I love it. And I think medicine gives you a lot, like loads of opportunities to do that. And I think people will listen
Mm.
to you because you're a doctor, and that's a bit pathetic, but it's true. And
Mm.
so for me, I think I derive a lot of satisfaction from being able to like explain stuff, but also I feel like I can make almost an instant impact on people's lives. Yeah, does that answer the question? Yeah,
That's quite an interview question. Answer. It's good. No, it's good.
yeah, yeah, fair enough.
I think for this person, they're coming in from a different point of view, a different point in life from where we were. Right? We came in as young A-level students, and then made that decision that we are going to do this, and kind of ended up being what it is. And what I would always say is that it's easier to say in retrospect, but it is important to identify like what it is that you want from the job. Like what is it that you really want from the job, right? So we've joked about it, and I'm going to be honest. I think this is completely true because I think that my parents wanted me to be a doctor, but it had very little to do with helping people. Even though I went to the
Mm,
interview saying I want to help people, etc., etc., had nothing to do with any of that. They just wanted a doctor in the family. That's just what they wanted. Um, and I kind of bought into the idea, like as I was growing up, that I bought into that. Oh yeah, I want to be a doctor. And then as you're trying, because my parents kind of wanted me to be, and I remember like once or twice I told my parents, I wouldn't mind being an actor, and they were like, well, no, and they started having a go at me. Or I said I want to be a builder because it looked like fun, and they had a massive go at me. But every time I said I want to be a doctor, they're like, oh, my son wants to be a doctor. So I kind of had that sort of
yeah,
I was already being kind of
feedback
not
loop.
yeah, you were just kind of like, yeah, that kind of, you realize that if I say I'm gonna be a doctor, my parents are gonna be happy with me. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna
Pavlov.
keep going with that.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then you kind of you go for it, and then when you're going for the interviews, you're like, how am I going to get in? And someone's like, you start reading these books, and they say you got to say this, you got to say this, and you go interview practice, you got to say this, and you don't know how much of it you really believe, really. But then it's only kind of as you go through your career, you start to realize, or you think you know what's important to you and why you're doing it. So I think um, identify what is it you want, and there's nothing wrong with any of those reasons. So let's say you want to be the doctor in the family, or you want to have the status, you go for it, because regardless of why you're doing it, the outcome actually, in my opinion, is good. Like whatever you end up doing in medicine, you're helping people. That's an amazing thing. There's nothing you can take away from that. But if you're doing it for an ego and you want to be the biggest person in the room and you want people to listen, and I'm not, you want people to know who you are, then at least you know your why.
yeah,
You go for it.
yeah,
If you're doing because you want to help people, amazing. You go for it. If you want to have a lifestyle where you're not doing very much and you're getting paid a lot, it's possible. Go for it. If you want to have a really busy life and you're getting paid a lot for it, go for it. It's all there for the
yeah,
taking
true.
if that's what you want. But it's good to know that's what you want and why you're there, because the last thing you want to do is spend decades doing all sorts of stuff, getting to the end and thinking to yourself, "But where's my money?
Mm,
Where's my lifestyle?" But that's not what you were chasing in the first place. Like,
yeah,
know what you want and go for it, because medicine will give you everything that you want if you know it, if you know what it is, because there will be something somewhere that will give you everything, I think,
yeah, yeah, fair
in my
enough.
humble opinion. So absolutely go for it, but just know what you're doing it for and be honest with yourself when you ask that question. What is it
Yeah.
that you want?
I've
Yeah.
got a flip side to that, which is that I know someone who's gone the
Mm?
other way, who went from being a cardiology registrar to cardiac scientist, and they realised that what
Amazing.
they enjoyed the most was doing echoes, and so that's what they chose to
Mm.
do. And I think you can still have them. Obviously, I'm sure they'll know this from seeing their colleagues and stuff. You can have an excellent career doing
Mm.
that. And the other thing is particularly having done that. And if you say you wanted to do cardiology, oh my gosh, you'd be made, because as a cardiac physiologist, you get your exams paid for, and you could do them. I mean, it'd be excellent preparation. So like you're,
Mm.
if that's in terms of what kind of advantages will be bestowed upon you compared to others, I mean, you'll be in an amazing position. But yeah, you're right, Imran. I think one of the great things about medicine is that you can kind of take what you want from it. Yeah,
Exactly. So I would say that choose the life that you want, not the job that you want. and then work your way backwards from that. That's what I think. That's the way that I should have done things, and I would encourage other people to do. Like, choose a life that you want, and then work your way backwards and figure out how you're going to get there. Because if you've
Cool.
got that, then you've got a good direction. Right. So I think that's it, isn't it? We've
Yeah. Well, there's
pretty
one
decent
tweet I kind
already,
of want to
yeah?
end with, which is one
Oh yeah,
from
go for it.
Mark Lewis, so at Markle Wismid, MD. And it goes, the
Mhm.
professional will not be distracted. The amateur tweets, the pro works. I mean, that's like the opposite of what we're doing, isn't it? Isn't it?
Yeah, I guess so. But then my question is always, what is a professional?
Yeah, I don't know.
What is that? What does that mean?
Yeah.
It's like, it's that I think I was talking to a friend of mine and I was saying, I think I asked him honest questions like, bro, do I do good reports or bad reports? And he goes, what's a good report? So I don't have an answer to that question.
Right.
You know, like the
Good.
job's done,
Good.
and people know what they need to do. Fair enough, I might not talk about all the intricacies of everything under the sun, but it gets the job done. So that's a
Yeah.
good report, isn't
Oh
it?
my god!
It does the job.
Yeah,
Go on.
fair enough. Sorry, I was just thinking there's so many other good threads that I wanted to include. Like, there's this really great thread from at Garius, Garius, that's John Ball, and he's talking about the history of Tesco club cards. Can you please check that out? It's just so funny. It's about basically using students as focus groups and how that went terribly for Tesco. Got to check that out. That was on the 29th of April 2019. Sorry.
Should I link these? Should I link these?
Yeah,
With
link
the
them in
final
the
ones?
end. Yeah. Please check them
Or
out.
you know what? Should I try and revitalize our mailing list? Our mailing list has grown actually. Yeah, I just haven't paid attention to it.
Has it?
I maybe There's a few more people on there. It's been increasing.
No.
We did promise that once you get to 100, you do a shirtless photo, but
Are we at 100? No.
I think we might be.
Wow.
But anyway, the point is like it is increasing. So maybe I should just put it in the mailing list. And
Yeah,
if you
we
want to join
should.
the mailing list, then go to twomedics.com.co.uk and join the mailing list, and maybe we'll send some of the tweets that we didn't manage to get through out on there.
Cool.
Great. So well, it's nice to be back.
Good to be back.
Everyone have a great week. Try not to get cancelled. Look after each other. Be nice, etc., etc. Yeah? All right, then.
All right, guys. Take care.
All right then.
Bye.
Bye.